Hello, today we're doing lesson 13.1 using trig with right triangles. Ratios of right triangle side lengths are used to define the 6 trig functions. Sine, cosine, and tangent you're already familiar with, and we remember it as SOHCAHTOA. Today we're also going to learn about cosecant, which is actually the reciprocal of sine, so it's going to be hypotenuse over opposite. Secant, which is going to be the reciprocal of cosine, which is hypotenuse over adjacent. And cotangent, which is going to be the reciprocal of tangent, so it's going to be adjacent over opposite. If we take a look at this chart below, you do need to know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent, and here we go, we have the reciprocals, which I just talked about. So you will need to know these. The easiest way I remember it is by remembering SOHCAHTOA, and then I keep my S's and C's together, and I remember that. So if I keep my S's and C's together, I have sine and cosecant. Those are the reciprocals of each other. Cosine and secant, those are the reciprocals of each other. And then I remember these two because cotangent has the word tangent in it. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This first problem, we are going to evaluate the 6 trig functions of the angle theta. So I'm going to start at theta, and I'm going to find all 6 trig functions. Now, if you notice, we look at this triangle, we're missing a side. We're definitely going to need to know that side to go ahead and do these ratios. Hopefully from yesterday, you recognize that this is actually a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And I know that because if I look at this leg, the hypotenuse is root 2 times that. And what ratio has root 2 times the leg? The 45, 45, 90 triangle. So let's go ahead and get started. Sine of theta. I'm going to start at theta, and I'm going to do opposite, which is 5, over the hypotenuse, which is 5 root 2. Now I can see that the 5s are going to cancel. That leaves a 1 on top. You can't leave a root 2 in the denominator, so we're going to go ahead and multiply the numerator and denominator by root 2. When I do that, I get root 2 over 2, and that's as simplified as it can get, so my ratio for the sine is root 2 over 2. Now cosecant, remember, is the reciprocal of that. So when I do cosecant, I'm going to go ahead and take my original and flip it. So 5 root 2 over 5. The 5s are going to cancel, and we're left with root 2. Now, cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. When we do adjacent over hypotenuse, we end up with the same thing we did for sine. And that happens because the legs are equal. So we're going to end up with 1 over root 2. We need to multiply by root 2 over root 2, and we end up with the same thing, root 2 over 2. So of course when we go to do secant, we're going to have the reciprocal of that, which is going to be the same as cosecant, root 2. Now tangent is going to be opposite over adjacent. So 5 over 5 reduces to 1, and cotangent is the reciprocal of that, which is also 5 over 5, which is 1. Okay, now we're going to be given a trig function. We're going to be given what that ratio is, and then we're going to need to find a different trig function. So we're going to start these problems by drawing a right triangle. Doesn't matter how you draw it, just label the right angle and label one of the other angles to be theta. So you're given that the cosine of theta is 7/10. I know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So in relationship to the angle I called theta, this would be the adjacent side, so that's 7. This would be the hypotenuse side. Now I want to find sine of theta. To find sine of theta, you need the opposite. I don't have the opposite side, so you're going to need to use Pythagorean theorem to find it. So let's call this x for right now, and let's go ahead and do 7 squared plus x squared equals 10 squared. Go ahead and solve for x. You get 100 minus 49. This is practice from yesterday, and we end up with 51. Get x all by itself by square rooting both sides. We cannot simplify the square root of 51, so this side is the square root of 51. So when I go to do sine, I'm going to do opposite theta over hypotenuse. Make sure there's nothing that you need to simplify, and in this problem there isn't, so this is our final answer. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try the U-try. You're going to do the same exact thing I did. You're going to draw a right triangle, call one of the acute angles theta, and you're going to go ahead, set up the sine, and then find the cotangent. Okay, now we're going to solve for right triangles. When the directions say solve the right triangle below, you are going to find all the parts that aren't given. So if we take a look at this problem, it says solve triangle ABC. You're given angle A to be 28 degrees. You're given side B to be 15. So what are you missing? You already have angle C. You're missing angle B, you're missing little a, and little b. Okay, starting with the angle is simple because we know these three angles need to add up to be 180 degrees. So we're going to go ahead and just find angle B by subtracting 180 minus 28 minus 90. And when you do that, you get angle B to be 62 degrees. Now, we're going to find angle A. You need to decide which trig function you want to use. I like to start with the angle I was given in case I made a mistake finding the other angle. So I start with the angle I was given and I say to myself, which side do I want to find first, A or C? I'm going to find A first. So in relationship to my 28 degrees, this is the opposite side and this is the adjacent side. So I'm going to use tangent to solve for A. So tangent of 28 degrees equals A over 15. We practiced already doing this on our calculator, but when you do tangent of 28 degrees, make sure that your mode is in degrees. Make sure you keep at least 4 decimal places. So when I do that, I get 0.5317 equals A over 15. Now I need to get A all by itself, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 15. When I do that, I get A to be 7.98. Please round to the nearest tenth, which would actually make that 8. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and find B. It should be little c, I'm sorry. We're going to go ahead and find C. So I'm going to start with the sides I was given, just in case I found something incorrect. So again, I'm going to start with the 28 degrees. In relationship to the 28 degrees, I have my adjacent side, and I need to find my hypotenuse. So I'm going to use cosine because I'm going to use adjacent and hypotenuse. So I'm going to do cosine of 28 degrees equals 15 over C. Now when I do this one, I'm going to find the cosine of 28 degrees, keep 4 decimal places, 0.8829 equals 15 over C. I'm going to multiply both sides by C. Okay, so now I have to get C by itself. So we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by this decimal, 0.8829. 0.8829. So on your calculators, you should do 15 divided by 0.8829. I get 16.99. So you round that to the nearest tenth, it becomes 17. Okay? I would like you to pause the video and try to solve the next triangle on your own. Let's take a look at it together for a second. You're given angle B to be 51 degrees, and you're given side C to be 24. So what I want you to solve for in this problem is angle A, side A, and side. Now let's take a look at angle of elevation and angle of depression. The most important thing to remember here, because now we're going to have some word problems, is that angle of elevation is your line of sight. Always draw a horizontal line and then looking up. Okay, that's very, very important. You must draw the horizontal line first, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we go ahead and practice the word problems. Now, angle of depression, so if I'm looking down, draw your line of sight first, then down. Okay, we're going to keep that in mind every time we draw a picture for one of these word problems. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. A parasailer is attached to a boat. Okay, so here's a boat, here's a parasailer up in the sky with a rope. The rope is 300 feet long. The angle of elevation from the boat to the parasailer. Now be careful. You're looking at the boat and you're looking up at you're on the boat and you're looking up at the parasailer. So we're going to go out and then up. This is our angle of elevation. This is 48 degrees. Estimate the parasailer's height above the boat. So if you want a height, you always want the vertical distance. So we're going to call that x. So you can see your right triangle here. We have the right angle, x, 48, and 300. Okay, so in relationship to the 48 degrees, this is my opposite side, and this is my hypotenuse. So we're going to go ahead and do opposite and hypotenuse, which is sine. So sine of 48 degrees equals x over 300. On your calculators, we're going to go ahead and put in the sine of 48 degrees. Keep 4 decimal places, please, 0.7431. Now we need to get x all by itself, and we're going to do that by multiplying both sides by 300. When I do that, I get x to be 223 feet. Okay? Let's go ahead and try the next problem. This is the you try. I'm going to help you set it up, and then I'll let you pause the video and try to get the answer. It says the sun casts a shadow of a pine tree on the ground. So here's our pine tree. Not a very pretty pine tree. Here's the sun. The tree is 65 feet tall. The angle of depression from the top of the tree, so we're at the top of the tree, we're going to go out, then down, is 53.4 degrees. Find the length of the shadow. So think about it. Obviously, the shadow is not up in the air. The shadow would be on the ground. What distance are we finding? We're finding the horizontal distance. The height we know to be 65. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. You guys go try to decide which trig function to use and what you get for the length of the shadow. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead, write them on the at the bottom of the video, and we'll discuss them tomorrow in class. When you walk in tomorrow, I do want you to know the 6 trig functions. I want you to know that sine, cosine, and tangent. I want you to remember it as SOHCAHTOA, and I want you to remember that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Okay, see you tomorrow in class.